Now it's my tremendous honor to introduce this year's commencement speaker, Alva Taylor. Dr. Taylor is a senior associate dean at Dartmouth's Tuck School of Business and is also the faculty director of the Glassmeyer-McNamee Center for Digital Strategies. Alva is an expert in the fields of technological change, entrepreneurship, and strategic decision-making in dynamic environments. His award-winning research and teaching have influenced how leaders drive innovation for long-term success, emphasizing adaptability in rapidly changing environments. As an undergraduate at Cornell University, Dr. Taylor played football and was offensive MVP in his senior year for the Big Red. And perhaps more importantly, later, when he coached youth basketball in Hanover, he claims that he was 3-0 against Cardigan teams. We'll try not to hold that against him. Perhaps his most impressive accomplishment is that Alva and his wife Gail are also the proud parents of 4 children, 2 of whom are here today, including Gabriel Taylor, Cardigan class of '22. Gabriel is graduating from St. Paul's School next weekend and will be heading off to Amherst College. Welcome back, Gabriel. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Alva Taylor.
Welcome, proud parents, family, and friends. And I want to say thank you to faculty and staff for all that you do. When Chris first asked me to speak, I wasn't sure what I'd say. So I mentioned this to my son, Gabriel, and his response was, "Dad, don't worry. Teenage boys won't remember anything you say anyway." So now, in this talk, I have 2 purposes. One, to give you some advice, but the second is to try to embarrass Gabriel. So as Chris mentioned in the introduction, I've spent most of my life immersed in the forefront of technology, and I've been privileged to spend time with the CEO of Intel in his kitchen baking cookies and talking about why would you ever put marketing on a chip that's inside a laptop, or talking with Steve Wozniak, who's a co-founder of Apple, about his opinions on the future of computing and flannel shirts. He's a big fan, by the way. Or the talking to an investor about and walking through Stanford's campus and talking about this little small startup called Goggle. And that's how he pronounced it. We all know now it's Google. And as I thought about where I spend my time now, I spend my time now doing the same thing, thinking about how technology is going to impact our future, but a lot of it's centered around what has all been in the news, which is artificial intelligence. And so I talk with companies, I talk with organizations about how is that going to reshape our world going forward. So having this opportunity to speak to all of you on these issues and combining that with the Cardigan experience made me think about, in a world of AI, what's important? And what we know so far about that is the key around AI is getting the choices. It's about getting the multiple choices that you can have. Now, what we found out about that is AI is great at being average. It's great at being ordinary. So if what you want is ordinary, if what you want is average, AI is great at that. However, what the world needs now more than ever is extraordinary, of people and thoughts and actions that are above average. So I was thinking, so how do we get there? And so I said, we're always talking about how we can use AI, and I decided to flip it and to think about what are the lessons that we can apply to our lives based on what we've learned about using AI. So the first thing in using AI that you have to get right is something called the prompt. Now, the prompt is just the question that you provide to the system to start getting possible answers. So if we apply that to our lives, life, like AI, responds to the prompts we give it. What do we know about effective prompts? Well, we do know that if you're lazy in giving the prompts, if you give bad prompts, you get dull results. The best prompts are bold, open-ended, rooted in your values, and full of examples. Those are the types of prompts in your life and in AI that lead to discovery. We've also seen that these examples, they don't have to be famous. The ones that work best are specific and personal. And as I think about the prompts in my life, the people who shape the questions I ask are the people who were personal to me. My mom's work ethic, my best friend's optimism, my tough roommate who turned into a warm-hearted girl dad. Each of those helped me think about what are the types of questions that I'm going to ask. What prompts am I going to take? In fact, this is so important. In the AI world, we have a term for that called prompt engineering. Just think about that, prompt engineering, where you spend all of your time trying to think of what's the right way to ask questions. And I want all of you to be great prompt engineers of your life. Ask great questions. Ask wonderful questions there. Now, once you've done that, once you've become a great prompt engineer, what's next? Well, after you give the system your prompt, you start generating ideas. And so that uncovers opportunities, challenges, directions, sometimes you didn't expect. But that's not finished, because the job is to make selections. What's been interesting is you can ask the same question to different AI systems and you'll get very different answers. But what's shocking is you can ask the same question to the same AI system and still get different answers. So it's not about the output, it's about the choices that you make in determining what's the best direction for you to take. You're always going to need to edit the ones that need work and delete the stuff that doesn't belong. That's how you take that rough draft that you get from these questions into something that's really worthy and important. Now, sometimes when you give AI a prompt, it gives you a weird answer, something that totally doesn't make sense. And we have a term for that. It's called hallucinations. All right? Now, in life, you'll get those too. You'll try something that seems like a great idea at the time, and it turns out to be way off. And that's normal. It doesn't mean that your prompt was bad or that you're failing. What it means, that's the time to pause, check your output, rethink your approach, and redirect. Now, I know you've been waiting for me to try to embarrass Gabriel, so here it comes. So let me give you an example of how you have to guard against hallucinations. When Gabriel was about 10 years old, he and his brother was bored. Their prompt, what outdoor activity should we do? What they got back was a hallucination. The output said, oh, a game where you throw rocks at each other. Gabriel lost. There was blood involved. There's a resulting scar on his forehead. That happens sometimes. Sometimes those bad ideas, those hallucinations, if we don't take a moment to reflect, would lead us down the wrong path. And that happens to everybody. Right? It's about redirecting. It's about recognizing them a little bit earlier than before when the rock hits you. What that shows is you're not going to get the perfect answer every time. And by the way, a lot of times it's not your fault. People will give you the wrong advice sometimes. You'll ask the wrong person. Sometimes it's just bad timing. So it's always not your fault. And that doesn't matter. It matters what you do with the options. It's having the guts to say, nope, not the path, and trying again. Now, once you get that solid answer from your life prompt, here comes the real action. It's going from the idea to executing. In AI, that means turning those outputs often into code that you're going to use. In life, that means stepping up and doing things that are sometimes hard. And these things don't have to be big. Because every leader, every person, as you start to do something and take action, starts with small steps. So the key is not just getting a good answer, but causing it to live through your actions. One of the great things about Cardigan and what Cardigan does, it gives you an opportunity to practice that. Whether as a dorm leader or organizing a group project to make sure everybody stays on track or making a presentation, Cardigan has given you chances to lead and execute under grace and patience. In doing this, you're learning how to turn your prompt output into action. Now, let me give you an example of this, and this is my second time trying to embarrass Gabriel, and this will be the last time. Gabriel played organized football for the first time ever here at Cardigan in the 9th grade. He was not alone, and because of COVID, most of his team had never played football before. And as you can imagine, given that, most of the team struggled. They lost their first 5 games. And by the way, it wasn't even close. You know, as you think about it, I think in baseball, often you have a mercy rule. Sometimes in those football games, the parents were wishing we had a mercy rule in that way. And Gabriel was a team captain. So during that period, we had many conversations. And his prompts that he was trying to get answers for was, how do I keep this team together? How do I keep their effort up? How do I get them to continuing improving? The output, the answers were all hard. Keep working. Be energetic in practice. Be positive in the locker room when you're tired. Do extra work with your teammates. Just think about that. So just think about it. He could have asked some different prompts, right? How do I stay the star? How do I make this easy? How do I get off of this team? The answers could have been hallucinations as well. Blame the coach. quit. Right? Those are all possible answers. But he focused and was able to determine and pick and choose the output that fit his values and the direction that he wanted to go. Well, it was next to the last game. They were playing Exeter, and they were ahead. And we were all shocked. They were ahead. 10 seconds left. The quarterback rolled right. The ball was thrown in the air. It was spinning like slow motion, like in the movies. And unlike in the movies, Exeter caught it. They scored. Cardigan lost. Parents, we were wailing, no, this is horrible. They were so close. And then we looked at the field, and after kind of stomping around a little bit, we noticed that the boys' heads weren't down. It was almost as if, have you ever seen one of those balloons in front of the car dealerships where it kind of falls over, but then it blows back up and it's straight again? That's how they were. Like, for moments, they were down, but then they stood back straight up again. He said, the team had lost, but that's when it was clear that they were a team then. And then the last game was against Avon Old School. And I won't even tell you the story about that because they dominated from start to finish. In fact, against one of the tougher teams that they had faced. They dominated from tough to finish. And after celebrating with his teammates, I remember Gabriel coming over to give me a hug and saying softly, I wish I had a few more games with this team. Right. That's the journey. That's the journey we want all of you to have. The journey of asking great questions, the journey of seeing and determining what's the right answers for you, and then doing the tough things. Now, just because I've embarrassed him twice, I just want to say that Gabriel, as was mentioned, went on to go to St. Paul School. He played football there, became an all-conference defensive back, and in his senior year, they had an undefeated season. But what I'm most proud of is when I talk to coaches, when we talk to the coaches at the different camps, when he was being recruited, one of the consistent things that everyone says was that Gabriel seems like a great teammate. That's the journey that Cardigan has prepared you for. Now, Cardigan Mountain School is a special place, a place that takes middle school boys and helps them become young men. Each of you will face tough questions, will get some hallucinations, will take some missteps, and will have opportunities to lead. But in that, don't let the world make you average. Don't let the world make you, don't be tempted by taking the ordinary answer, the ordinary path. Use what you've learned during your time here. Integrity, curiosity, resilience. Use that to be extraordinary. And with that, I hope I've embarrassed Gabriel at least once. And I want to congratulate the Cardigan Mountain School class of 2025. Congratulations.